Emma had always loved the city, the lights, the noise, the endless flow of people and possibilities. But recently, that very city had begun to feel suffocating. The office deadlines, the crowded subway rides, the constant pressure to be someone she wasn't, it all started to weigh her down. She had reached a point where she needed a break, somewhere quiet, somewhere she could breathe, somewhere that felt far away from everything she knew. That was how she found herself on a dusty, winding road, driving toward a ranch she had heard about from a friend. A friend who insisted that the ranch, with its open fields and wide skies, could do wonders for her stressed mind. The ranch was nothing like the city. The air was fresher, carrying the scent of earth, grass, and animals. Birds chirped overhead, and somewhere in the distance, a stream gurgled softly. Emma's car rattled slightly on the uneven road, but she didn't mind. There was a sense of freedom in the unevenness, a reminder that not everything needed to be perfect or controlled. When she finally saw the ranch house, a wooden structure with weathered walls and a wide porch, she felt a strange mix of awe and nervousness. This was a world she had never known. And yet it called to her, promising something she didn't even know she needed. Emma parked her car and stepped out, stretching her arms as she took in the open fields. The sun was beginning its slow descent, casting golden light over the hills and the scattered barns. The sound of hooves on dry earth reached her ears, and she turned to see a horse grazing nearby. The animal's calmness was contagious, and for the first time in weeks, Emma felt her tension ease slightly. She walked toward the ranch house, hoping someone would be there to welcome her. It was then that she saw him. Luke, the rancher, was standing near the barn, mending a fence. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with hands roughened by years of hard work. His clothes were simple, practical, but there was an undeniable strength in the way he carried himself. He noticed Emma almost immediately, his eyes narrowing slightly, not in suspicion, but in cautious curiosity. Visitors were rare here, and strangers even rarer. Yet, there was something in Emma's hesitant smile, her careful movements, that made him pause. "Hi," Emma called softly, not wanting to startle him. I'm looking for the ranch owner." Luke's brow lifted. "You found him," he said, his voice calm but edged with caution. "You here to stay?" Emma nodded. "Yes. For a few days. If that's all right." She tried to sound confident, but the nervous quiver in her voice betrayed her. Luke studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right. You can stay. But you'll need to follow a few rules while you're here. This isn't a hotel." Emma smiled, relieved. "I understand. Thank you." As she followed Luke toward the ranch house, she noticed the details of the ranch, the wide, open spaces, the animals moving freely, the smell of hay and earth mingling in the warm evening air. Everything felt alive in a way the city never had. She felt a flicker of excitement, mixed with anxiety. This was unfamiliar territory, but maybe that's exactly what she needed. That night, Emma sat on the porch, sipping a cup of tea Luke had prepared. The sky was painted with shades of orange and purple, and the stars were beginning to appear. One by one, the silence was comforting, almost therapeutic. Luke sat beside her, a quiet presence, not intrusive but reassuring. They spoke in small sentences at first, talking about the weather, the ranch, and the animals. Slowly, the conversation deepened, touching on things neither of them usually shared with strangers. "I've never done anything like this before," Emma admitted, glancing at the horizon. "I mean, leaving the city, coming here, living in a place like this." Luke nodded. "It's different. But sometimes, different is what people need." Emma smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. There was something about Luke's calm demeanor, his straightforward way of speaking, that made her feel safe. She realized she could breathe here, could let go of the constant stress she carried. The next morning, Emma woke up to the sound of roosters crowing and the sun streaming through the window. The air smelled of hay and fresh earth, and for a moment, she simply lay there, letting herself soak it all in. Luke was already outside, tending to the animals. Watching him work, she noticed the quiet rhythm of his day, the way he moved with purpose. The care with which he handled the horses and cattle. There was no rush, no artificial pressure, just the natural flow of life on the ranch. Emma joined him, attempting to help feed the animals. Her city skills weren't much use here, and she stumbled awkwardly a few times, spilling feed or tripping over uneven ground. Luke didn't scold her. He guided her patiently, showing her how to handle the animals gently but firmly. There was a moment when she lost her balance near the barn, and Luke was there instantly, steadying her with his hands. His grip was strong, reassuring, and for a fleeting second, Emma felt a strange thrill mixed with gratitude. "Careful," he said softly. "These animals are sensitive, but they're not as fragile as you think." Emma laughed nervously, brushing off her clothes. "I'll try to remember that." As the day progressed, Emma began to appreciate the simplicity and authenticity of ranch life. It was hard work, but there was a reward in every small task. The satisfaction of feeding the animals, tending the land, even mending fences. She began to see Luke in a new light, not just as a strong, silent rancher, but as someone deeply connected to the land, to the life he had built. His quiet strength was not just physical. It was in his patience, his attention to detail, and his ability to remain calm under pressure. That evening, a sudden rainstorm caught them by surprise. The sky darkened, and raindrops began to fall in heavy sheets. Emma, unprepared for the sudden downpour, dashed for the barn, slipping in the mud. Before she could hit the ground, Luke was there, catching her with a firm, steady grip. "Got you," he said, pulling her to safety. Emma's heart raced, not just from the fall, but from the sudden closeness, the unexpected reassurance. She looked up at him, rain dripping from her hair, and saw a mixture of concern and surprise in his eyes. For the first time, she felt completely vulnerable and completely safe. The storm forced them to take shelter inside the barn. They laughed nervously, soaked and muddy, sharing a quiet moment of connection amidst the thunder and rain. Emma realized that her visit to the ranch was not just about escaping the city. It was about discovering something deeper: trust, connection, and perhaps even a glimpse of herself she had long forgotten. By the time the rain stopped, Emma felt a subtle shift within her. She was no longer just a visitor. She was part of this world, at least for now. And Luke, the quiet, rugged rancher, was no longer just a stranger. He was someone who had reached out in her moment of need. Someone who had shown her that even in unfamiliar places, kindness and trust could be found. As the sun set again, painting the sky with brilliant colors, Emma sat on the porch, reflecting on the day. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace. The ranch, the animals, and even Luke had become part of a story she didn't want to end, at least not yet. And as she watched the stars appear, she knew that her journey had only just begun. The next morning, Emma woke to the soft glow of sunlight filtering through the curtains of her small room in the ranch house. The distant sound of animals stirring and the gentle creak of the farmhouse floorboards were comforting in a way she had never experienced in the city. She stretched and felt a strange mix of anticipation and nervousness. Today, she knew, would be another day of learning, of stepping into a world so different from the one she had always known. Downstairs, Luke was already busy with his morning chores. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with the earthy scent of hay and livestock. Emma quietly poured herself a cup, trying not to disturb the peaceful rhythm of the ranch. But Luke noticed her immediately. "Morning," he said, his voice calm but warm. "You slept well?" Emma nodded, smiling. "I did. The quiet. It's different. But I like it." Luke grunted softly in acknowledgement and handed her a small basket of fresh eggs. "We'll start with breakfast for the chickens. Helps you get a feel for the animals and the routine here." Emma followed him outside, feeling the crisp morning air fill her lungs. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold. The chickens scattered at their approach, clucking loudly, and Emma laughed as she tried to keep them together while Luke showed her how to distribute the feed evenly. "You have to be gentle but firm," he explained, demonstrating with careful hands. Animals can sense fear or hesitation. Stay calm, and they'll follow you. Emma watched him closely, mimicking his movements. She stumbled a few times, spilling feed and losing her balance, but Luke's presence was reassuring. When she nearly slipped on the damp ground, his hand was there instantly, steadying her. She felt a rush of warmth and gratitude. "Thanks," she said softly, looking up at him. Luke nodded, returning his attention to the chickens. There was a quiet understanding between them, a trust forming silently, built on small acts of help and guidance. For Emma, every day brought a new lesson. Not just about the ranch, but about patience, responsibility, and resilience. As the day unfolded, Luke guided Emma through other chores, feeding the horses, checking on the cattle, and repairing fences along the edges of the pasture. Each task was physically demanding, but Emma found herself enjoying the rhythm of work, the satisfaction of completing something tangible. She realized that life on the ranch was not about speed or perfection. It was about attention, care, and presence. During a break in the afternoon, Emma and Luke sat on a fallen log near the creek. The sun was warm, and the gentle sound of water flowing over rocks created a peaceful backdrop. For a while, neither of them spoke. Emma watched Luke, noticing the way his eyes softened when he looked at the animals, the gentle way he ran his hand along the fence post as if he could feel the history in the wood. "You really love this place," she said finally, breaking the silence. Luke nodded, his gaze focused on the water. "I do. It's not perfect, but it's honest. Everything you see here, I've worked for. It's hard work, but it's worth it." Emma nodded thoughtfully, realizing that the ranch represented more than just a physical space. It was a reflection of Luke himself, strong, resilient, and quietly patient. She felt a connection forming, not just to the ranch, but to the man who had built it with his own hands. Over the next few days, their bond deepened. Emma began to open up about her life in the city, the stress, the loneliness, the constant pressure to perform. She spoke hesitantly at first, unsure of how much to reveal, but Luke's calm and attentive demeanor encouraged her to continue. "I've always been someone who plans everything," she admitted one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "And when things don't go according to plan, I panic. I guess that's why I needed to come here, to remind myself there's more to life than schedules and deadlines." Luke listened quietly, nodding occasionally. "Life doesn't always follow a plan," he said gently. "Out here, you learn to adapt. You learn to trust yourself and the people around you." Emma felt a wave of relief. It was the first time in months that she felt truly heard. Without judgment or expectation, she realized that she could trust Luke, not just as a guide through the physical world of the ranch, but as someone who could understand her struggles and offer support. One evening, as they worked together repairing a broken section of fence, a sudden gust of wind blew Emma's hat off, sending it tumbling across the field. She ran after it, laughing nervously, and tripped over a small rock, falling to the ground. Before she could even cry out, Luke was there, steadying her and helping her to her feet. "You all right?" he asked, his concern evident. Emma nodded, brushing dirt from her clothes. "I'm fine, thanks to you." Luke smiled faintly, the corner of his mouth twitching in amusement. "You've got to watch your step. This land doesn't forgive easily." Emma laughed, feeling a strange mix of embarrassment and relief. She realized that these moments of vulnerability were becoming easier to face, not because the world was any less intimidating, but because she had someone beside her who made her feel safe. As days turned into a week, Emma began to notice small changes within herself. She was calmer, more patient, and more confident in her abilities. Tasks that had seemed daunting at first, feeding the animals, tending to the land, even mending fences, now felt manageable. She was learning not just about ranch life, but about resilience, adaptability, and the importance of human connection. One evening, after a long day of work, Emma sat on the porch alone, reflecting on her journey so far. The sky was a deep indigo, dotted with stars, and the air was filled with the soft sounds of the ranch settling into the night. She thought about how much she had learned, not just about the ranch, but about herself. She realized that she had been hiding behind routines and distractions, avoiding the parts of herself that needed attention and care. Luke joined her silently, carrying 2 mugs of warm tea. He handed one to her, and they sat together, watching the night unfold. For a long time, they didn't speak, simply enjoying the quiet companionship. Then, Emma took a deep breath and said, "I feel different here. Like I'm finally breathing again." Luke nodded, his eyes reflecting the soft light of the stars. "That's good. That's exactly why people come here. To find themselves again, away from everything that holds them back." As the days passed, their conversations grew deeper. Emma shared stories of her childhood, her dreams, and her fears. Luke, in turn, shared tales of growing up on the ranch, of challenges he had faced, and lessons he had learned from the land and animals he cared for. There was a mutual respect and understanding that developed naturally, a bond formed through shared work, quiet moments, and small acts of trust. One afternoon, as Emma helped Luke mend a particularly stubborn section of fence, she suddenly felt a moment of vulnerability. She paused, wiping sweat from her brow, and looked at him with a quiet seriousness. Without thinking, she removed her jacket, symbolically letting go of a layer of protection she had carried for so long. Luke's eyes widened slightly in surprise, but he didn't step back. Instead, he reached out, steadying her, and offering a reassuring presence. Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and a budding trust that she had never allowed herself to feel so openly before. The moment passed without words, but it was significant. It marked a turning point in their relationship, a deepening of trust and emotional connection. Emma realized that vulnerability did not mean weakness, and Luke understood that his role was not just to guide her through the physical world of the ranch, but to be a steady presence as she navigated her own emotions. By the end of the second week, Emma felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. The ranch was no longer just a place to escape. It had become a space of growth, reflection, and connection. And Luke, the quiet, strong rancher, who had seemed so distant at first, was now someone she could rely on, someone she could trust with both her safety and her feelings. For Emma, the ranch was teaching her lessons that no city could offer. She was learning to slow down, to pay attention to the small details, to appreciate the rhythm of life, and to trust in herself and others. And in Luke, she had found not just a guide, but a friend and confidant, someone who could see her as she truly was, without pretense or judgment. As the sun set on another day, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Emma felt a sense of peace and anticipation. Her journey on the ranch was far from over. But she knew that she was growing stronger, more confident, and more connected to the land, to the animals, and to Luke. And for the first time in a long while, she felt truly ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Knowing that she was not alone, the morning air on the ranch carried a hint of tension. Emma noticed it immediately as she stepped outside, the sky tinged with gray and the wind a little sharper than usual. Luke had been up early, already moving through the fields with a purposeful stride, checking fences and ensuring the animals were safe. Emma followed him, carrying a small basket of feed, feeling the first stirrings of unease. Something about the day felt different. "Storm coming," Luke said without looking at her, his voice calm but firm. "We need to make sure everything's secure before it hits." Emma nodded, trying to keep up as he moved quickly from one fence to another, inspecting posts and tightening ropes. The horses whinnied nervously, sensing the change in the air. Luke's connection with the animals was remarkable. He moved among them with a calm authority, his presence reassuring them, even as the wind began to pick up. Emma did her best to help, but the storm approached faster than she expected. Rain began to fall in light drops, soon turning into a heavy downpour. The ground became slippery, and Emma struggled to maintain her balance as she carried feed to the animals. A sudden gust of wind, knocked the basket from her hands, spilling its contents across the muddy ground. Before she could react, Luke was there, steadying her with a firm grip. "Careful!" he shouted over the roar of the wind. "We need to get inside, now!" Emma's heart raced as they ran toward the barn, the rain soaking through her clothes and plastering her hair to her face. The animals, sensing the storm, became restless, adding to the chaos. Luke moved with practiced efficiency, guiding Emma and the animals to safety. There was no panic in him, only focus and determination, and Emma found herself relying completely on his guidance. Inside the barn, the storm raged with full force. Rain pounded on the roof, and the wind howled through the open gaps. Emma shivered, both from cold and fear, and Luke quickly wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. "Better?" he asked, his voice low but steady. Emma nodded, grateful for his presence. She realized, in that moment, how much she had come to trust him not just in small ways, but with her safety and her fear. The storm continued for hours, leaving Emma and Luke trapped inside the barn with the animals. They moved among the frightened livestock, calming them, checking for injuries, and securing the barn as best they could. Despite the tension, there was a strange sense of teamwork and connection between them. Emma's fear began to transform into focus. She was no longer panicking but actively participating, learning to handle crises with Luke's guidance. At one point, a young calf became separated from its mother, bleating loudly in panic. Emma froze, unsure what to do, but Luke gently guided her forward. "Stay calm," he instructed. "Move slowly. Speak softly. You'll get her back." Emma knelt, extending her hand toward the frightened animal. Her voice was soft, steady, and calm, just as Luke had taught her. Slowly, the calf responded, allowing Emma to lead it back to its mother. Luke watched with a faint smile, nodding approvingly. "See? You're doing fine," he said, "just like I knew you would." Emma felt a wave of pride and relief. The storm outside was still raging, but inside the barn, she felt a new sense of confidence, not just in handling the animals, but in herself. Luke's calm presence and guidance had shown her that she could face challenges without fear. As the hours passed, the storm began to subside. Rain still fell in steady sheets, but the worst of the wind had passed. Emma and Luke took a moment to catch their breath, sitting on a hay bale and sipping warm water from a shared bottle. The silence was heavy but comforting, filled with the mutual understanding that they had weathered the crisis together. "You handled that well," Luke said, his eyes meeting hers. "I know it wasn't easy." Emma smiled, feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. Luke shook his head slightly. "You had it in you all along. You just needed to trust yourself, and me. A little." The storm had tested more than their skills. It had tested their trust and their connection. Emma realized how much she had relied on Luke, not just for safety, but for guidance and reassurance. And Luke, in turn, had seen her grow in confidence and resilience. There was a quiet bond forming between them, strengthened by shared experience and mutual respect. After the storm, they worked together to repair the damage. Fences had been torn down, hay had been scattered, and some of the smaller animals needed extra care. It was tiring, physically demanding work, but Emma found satisfaction in every task they completed. She could feel herself becoming more attuned to the rhythms of ranch life, learning to anticipate problems and take action. One moment stood out in her mind as particularly significant. While fixing a fence near the edge of the pasture, Emma lost her balance again, slipping on the wet ground. Before she could fall completely, Luke's hand was there, steadying her. She looked up at him, rain dripping from her hair, and met his gaze. There was a mixture of concern, reassurance, and something else she couldn't quite name, a quiet understanding that passed between them in that instant. "Got you," he said softly. Emma nodded, her heart pounding. She felt a surge of gratitude and trust, but also a deeper recognition of their growing bond. This was not just a moment of physical support. It was a moment of emotional connection, a silent acknowledgement that they were there for each other, no matter the circumstances. By evening, the sky cleared. leaving behind a rainbow arching over the ranch. The air smelled of wet earth and fresh grass, and the animals had settled down once more. Emma and Luke stood together, surveying the work they had done and the challenges they had overcome. There was a sense of accomplishment, but also a quiet intimacy that had grown between them over the course of the storm. "You handled yourself well today," Luke said, his tone low and sincere. "I'm proud of you." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest. A mix of relief, pride, and something deeper she was only beginning to understand. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied softly. Meeting his eyes, Luke nodded, and for a moment, they simply stood there in silence, watching the rainbow fade into the evening sky. It was a moment of connection, unspoken but powerful, a turning point in their relationship that neither of them would forget. Over the next few days, life on the ranch continued. But Emma could feel a subtle change in herself. She was more confident, more aware, and more connected to the world around her. The storm had tested her in ways she hadn't expected, pushing her to confront fear, uncertainty, and her own limits. And through it all, Luke had been a steady presence, offering guidance, reassurance, and trust. Their conversations deepened as well. Emma spoke openly about her fears, her insecurities, and the pressures she had left behind in the city. Luke shared his own experiences, the challenges of ranch life, and the lessons he had learned from years of hard work and perseverance. There was a mutual respect and understanding that grew stronger with each passing day. One afternoon, as they repaired a section of fence that had been damaged in the storm, Emma paused, looking at Luke with a thoughtful expression. She realized how much she had come to rely on him, not just for physical guidance, but for emotional support. Without thinking, she did something symbolic. She removed her jacket, a barrier she had carried with her, and let herself be fully present in the moment. Luke's eyes widened slightly, surprised by the gesture, but he didn't step back. Instead, he reached out, steadying her and offering a reassuring presence. Emma felt a rush of warmth and trust, recognizing the depth of their connection. This moment marked a turning point in their relationship, solidifying the bond that had grown through shared experience, trust, and vulnerability. By the end of the week, Emma felt stronger, more confident, and more connected to the ranch, to the animals, and to Luke. She had learned lessons about resilience, patience, and trust that she could never have experienced in the city. And she had discovered the value of human connection, of having someone who could support and guide her through challenges, both physical and emotional. As the sun set on another day, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink, Emma reflected on the journey she had taken so far. The storm had been a test, a challenge that had revealed her strength and deepened her bond with Luke. She realized that this journey was not just about escaping the city, but about discovering herself, learning to trust, and forming connections that were real and meaningful. Luke stood beside her, his presence calm and reassuring. They watched the colors of the sky change, the animals settling into the evening calm, and the world feeling alive and full of possibility. Emma knew that their story was far from over, but she felt ready to face whatever came next, knowing that she was not alone. The days that followed the storm were calmer, almost peaceful in comparison to the chaos that had swept through the ranch. Emma woke each morning to the gentle sounds of the animals and the soft light of the sun spilling across the fields. The smell of fresh hay and earth was comforting, a constant reminder that life on the ranch moved at its own natural rhythm, unlike the hurried pace of the city she had left behind. She had grown accustomed to the routines, to the quiet satisfaction of work well done, and to the steady presence of Luke beside her. Luke had been quietly supportive through everything: the storm, the chores, and the emotional moments she had shared. Over time, their bond had deepened, a connection built not on words alone but on trust, understanding, and shared experiences. Emma noticed how easily she could talk to him now, about things she had never shared with anyone else, and how he listened, not judging, not offering solutions unless she asked, simply being present. One morning, as they walked together through the fields to check the fences, Emma felt a sense of gratitude and wonder. The ranch had become a place of learning and self-discovery, and Luke had been an essential part of that journey. She realized she had grown stronger, more confident, and more aware of herself. Tasks that once intimidated her, feeding the animals, tending to the land, mending fences, now felt manageable and even enjoyable. She had discovered a resilience she hadn't known she possessed. "Look at that," Luke said, pointing to a group of horses grazing calmly in the early light. "They're settling back in after the storm." "Just like us," Emma smiled. "It really feels like we weathered it together, doesn't it?" Luke nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "We did. You did more than you think. You adapted, stayed calm. You handled yourself well." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest. Praise from Luke wasn't something she was used to, but it meant more than she could express. She realized that she wasn't just a visitor to the ranch anymore. She was part of its life, part of its story, and part of Luke's world in a way she hadn't expected. Over the next few days, Emma found herself reflecting on the changes she had experienced. She no longer felt the same anxiety and pressure that had driven her to escape the city. Her mind felt clearer, her thoughts calmer, and her emotions more balanced. She noticed the small joys in life, the sun warming her skin, the sound of the creek, the way the animals responded to care and kindness. Even the physical labor, which had seemed daunting at first, brought her a quiet satisfaction. Luke noticed the shift in her too. He saw the way she moved with more confidence, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about the animals or the land, and the way she seemed more grounded and present. It was a subtle transformation, but one that did not go unnoticed. One evening, after a long day of repairs and chores, they sat together on the porch, sipping warm tea as the sun dipped below the horizon. The sky was painted in shades of orange, pink, and purple, reflecting off the fields and casting a soft glow on their faces. Emma felt a sense of peace settle over her, a quiet contentment she hadn't known in years. "I never realized how much I needed this," she said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "Not just the ranch, but everything. The quiet, the work, the connection. It's like I've found a part of myself I forgot existed." Luke nodded, his gaze steady. "Sometimes, it takes stepping away from everything familiar to see who we really are." "You've done well, Emma. You've grown in ways you didn't know you could." Emma felt a surge of gratitude. She wanted to express the depth of her feelings, but words seemed inadequate. Instead, she simply nodded, feeling understood and accepted in a way that had been foreign to her for so long. The following days were filled with more shared experiences, each one strengthening their bond. They repaired fences together, tended to the animals, and even took moments to enjoy the simple beauty of the ranch. The soft rustle of leaves, the gentle movement of the horses, the sound of birdsong in the early morning. Emma had grown to appreciate the rhythm of life here, the way every task, no matter how small, had purpose and meaning. One afternoon, while checking on the horses, Emma found herself reflecting on Luke's quiet strength. He wasn't just physically strong, though he certainly was, but emotionally steady as well. He had faced challenges on the ranch, on the land, and in life. Yet he remained patient, kind, and resilient. His presence had been a source of guidance and reassurance for her, helping her navigate not just the physical demands of ranch life, but the emotional ones as well. As the days passed, Emma felt a deepening connection not just to Luke, but to the ranch itself. She had come seeking a break from the pressures of city life, but she had found something more profound, a sense of belonging, a feeling of purpose, and the realization that trust and human connection were among the most valuable things in life. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with brilliant colors, Emma found herself opening up in a way she had never done before. She spoke of her fears, her doubts, and her hopes for the future. Luke listened attentively, his calm presence allowing her to express herself freely. There was no judgment, no expectation, just a quiet understanding that made her feel safe. "You've come a long way," Luke said softly when she finished. "Not just here on the ranch, but within yourself. You've learned to trust, to adapt, to face challenges head on. That's something many people never truly do." Emma felt a swell of emotion. She realized that her journey on the ranch had been about more than escaping the city. It had been about discovering her own strength and learning to embrace vulnerability. And Luke had been an essential part of that journey, guiding her, supporting her, and sharing his world in a way that allowed her to grow. The ranch, once foreign and intimidating, had become a place of comfort and growth. The animals responded to her care. The land welcomed her presence. And Luke had become a steady companion and trusted friend. She had learned lessons that extended beyond ranch life, lessons about patience, resilience, empathy, and the value of genuine human connection. As the final days of her stay approached, Emma felt a mixture of emotions. She was grateful for the experience, for the growth she had achieved, and for the bond she had formed with Luke. Yet, she also felt a sense of sadness at the thought of leaving this world behind. She had come seeking a temporary escape, but she had discovered a sense of home she hadn't anticipated. On her last evening at the ranch, Luke and Emma stood together on the porch, watching the sun set one final time. The sky was a masterpiece of colors, the air soft and warm, and the world seemed perfectly still. Emma felt a deep sense of gratitude and connection, knowing that the ranch and Luke had left an indelible mark on her life. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice filled with emotion. "For everything. For showing me this world. For trusting me. For being here." Luke nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "You did this for yourself, Emma. I just helped you see it. You've grown stronger, wiser, and more confident. That's all you." Emma felt a wave of warmth and understanding. She realized that the journey had been about more than learning ranch life. It had been about discovering herself, about forming trust and connection, and about embracing the world with courage and openness. She knew that she would carry these lessons with her, no matter where life took her next. As night fell, Emma packed her belongings, her heart full of memories, lessons, and a newfound sense of self. She looked around the ranch one last time, feeling a quiet reverence for the land, the animals, and the people who had made it so special. Luke had given her more than guidance and support. He had given her the gift of growth, connection, and trust. Before she left, she turned to Luke, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and hope. "I'll never forget this," she said softly. Luke nodded, his expression calm but meaningful. "I know you won't. And remember, you can always carry this with you, wherever you go." With a final glance at the ranch, Emma stepped into her car, feeling a mixture of nostalgia and anticipation. The city awaited her, but she was no longer the same person who had arrived here weeks ago. She was stronger, calmer, and more aware of her own resilience and capacity for connection. She had faced challenges, weathered storms, both literal and metaphorical, and emerged with a deeper understanding of herself and the world around her. As she drove away, the sun rising behind her, Emma felt a sense of peace and readiness for the next chapter of her life. The ranch had given her more than just a temporary escape. It had given her growth, insight, and a connection that would remain with her forever. And Luke, with his quiet strength and unwavering support, had become a symbol of the trust, guidance, and human connection that had transformed her journey. Emma smiled, feeling the wind in her hair and the open road ahead. She knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she was ready. She had discovered strength within herself, trust in others, and the profound beauty of genuine connection. And with that knowledge, she felt prepared to face whatever came next, carrying the lessons of the ranch and the bond she had formed with Luke into her future.